Imagine a world in turmoil, a world at war. The year is 1914 and World War I has just begun. A globe teetering on the brink of chaos, gripped by the escalating tensions among the European powers. It was a time of shifting alliances, a time of uncertainty. These tensions reached a boiling point with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, an event that sent shockwaves through the corridors of power in Europe. This single act of violence was the spark that lit the powder keg, setting off a chain reaction of events that would plunge the world into the bloodiest conflict it had ever seen. As the world became a battlefield, nations grappled with the horrors of war. It was a time of unprecedented destruction and loss, a time of heroes and villains, a time of trials and tribulations. After years of brutal warfare, the guns fell silent in 1918, paving the way for peace negotiations and the birth of the Treaty of Versailles. In January 1919, diplomats from around the world gathered in Paris for one of the most significant peace conferences in history. This marked the beginning of the Paris Peace Conference, an event that would reshape the world's geopolitical landscape after the end of World War I. The conference spotlighted three prominent figures, each representing a victorious power. These were Woodrow Wilson, the President of the United States, David Lloyd George, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, and Georges Clemenceau, the Prime Minister of France. Known as the Big Three, they wielded significant influence over the proceedings and the eventual agreement. Woodrow Wilson was the idealist among them. He arrived with his famous 14 points, a blueprint for peace that emphasized self-determination, open diplomacy, and a proposed League of Nations to prevent future conflicts. However, his lofty ideals were met with skepticism by his European counterparts. In contrast, David Lloyd George was a pragmatist. While he broadly supported Wilson's vision, he was under domestic pressure to ensure Germany's punishment. Thus, he sought a middle ground between Wilson's idealism and the demand for harsh penalties against Germany. The most unforgiving of the trio was Georges Clemenceau. He had witnessed 2 German invasions of France in his lifetime and was determined to prevent a third. Clemenceau demanded severe reparations and restrictions on Germany's military capabilities. Unsurprisingly, these differing views led to intense negotiations. Wilson had to compromise on several of his 14 points to appease his allies. Meanwhile, Lloyd George and Clemenceau grappled with balancing their desire for revenge against the need for a stable Europe. The result was a treaty that combined elements of all three perspectives. It included the creation of the League of Nations, as championed by Wilson, but also imposed hefty reparations and military restrictions on Germany, as demanded by Lloyd George and Clemenceau. After months of deliberation, the Treaty of Versailles was ready to be presented to Germany. The stage was set for a new world order, but not everyone was content with the decisions made in those grand Parisian halls. On June 28, 1919, Germany was handed the Treaty of Versailles, a document that would drastically change the course of history. This treaty, signed in the Hall of Mirrors at the Palace of Versailles in France, was a pivotal moment in global politics. It contained several key provisions that would shape the world for years to come. Firstly, the treaty demanded Germany's disarmament. It was ordered to reduce its army to a mere 100,000 men and was prohibited from possessing certain types of weapons. This was a move designed to prevent Germany from initiating future conflicts. The treaty also imposed significant territorial losses on Germany. Key lands were ceded to other nations, including Alsace-Lorraine to France and Eupen-Malmedy to Belgium. Also, the Saarland was placed under the administration of the League of Nations for 15 years. One of the most controversial aspects of the treaty was the war guilt clause. This clause held Germany responsible for the war and required it to pay reparations for the damage caused. The exact amount was not specified in the treaty, but it was later set at a staggering 132 billion gold marks. Lastly, the treaty led to the creation of the League of Nations. This international body aimed to maintain world peace and resolve international disputes through diplomacy. Germany, under threat of renewed war, reluctantly signed the treaty, marking the official end of World War I. The ink had barely dried on the treaty before its consequences began to unfold. In the immediate aftermath, Germany found itself crippled by the harsh reparations and territorial losses dictated by the treaty. The once proud nation was plunged into economic and political instability, a fertile ground for resentment and radical ideologies to take root. This period of turbulence marked the rise of a man who would change the course of history: Adolf Hitler. Utilizing the public discontent, Hitler and his National Socialist Party promised to restore Germany's honor and strength. His charismatic speeches and scapegoating of the treaty and its architects for Germany's woes won him mass appeal. The treaty, intended to ensure peace, had inadvertently provided a platform for the rise of one of the most destructive regimes in history. Hitler's aggressive foreign policies and blatant disregard for the treaty's terms led to the outbreak of another global conflict in 1939, World War II. This Second World War, far more devastating and widespread than its predecessor, reshaped the world in ways that are still felt today. The Treaty of Versailles, in its attempt to punish Germany and prevent future conflicts, ironically, ended up facilitating the very conditions for another war. The Treaty of Versailles, meant to secure lasting peace, instead sowed the seeds for another devastating global conflict. If you followed us through this historical journey, from the prelude to the treaty, the Paris Peace Conference, the signing of the Treaty of Versailles, and its profound aftermath, then we have a call to action for you. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Show us your support by liking this video and pressing the notification bell. That way, you'll always stay updated on our latest content. Let's continue exploring the past together, one video at a time, so tune in, stay informed, and keep learning.